Anthony Albanese finally got the good news, well, goodish news, that he desperately needed before calling an election almost certainly for April. Finally today, a cut in interest rates. The first such cut in 4 years. The first after 13 rate rises. But just a little cut, just a 1/4%. For someone with $500,000 mortgage, that will save them about $2.60 a day. Do not spend it all at once. So obviously it's too little too late. And with the Reserve Bank governor actually warning, don't expect another for a long time yet.
What are the chances the Reserve Bank is one and done when it comes to interest rate cuts? And today's cut could be the only one that we see.
I couldn't say. What I would say is that the market is expecting quite a few more interest rate cuts till the middle of next year, about 3 more on top of this. Whether or not that eventuates is going to depend very much on the data. Our feeling at the moment is that that is far too confident that that's as many rate cuts as we'll be having.
That and other clues sounded to me like the Reserve Bank governor was bullied into this decision by government nagging and whatever. The Treasurer, though, rushed out to claim credit.
Under this Labor government, inflation is down, wages are up, unemployment is low, and now interest rates are falling as well. This is the soft landing that we have been planning for and preparing for, but we can't be complacent about the months and years ahead.
They planned all this, but the opposition pointed out this was a little cut after a lot of pain.
In the course of the last 2.5 years or so, since interest rates have been rising, a typical Australian household has paid an extra $50,000 in interest rates than they had expected to pay. And that has been a huge impost, of course, on Australian families who have been doing it very, very tough. Now, despite the welcome cut today, it's a long journey back to the standard of living Australians had when these interest rate increases began. We've seen 12 interest rate increases under Labor and 1 down now.
Well, that seemed to be the view of voters in Dunkley, Melbourne's mortgage belt, who were of one voice today when Sky News asked them. Everyone that was asked, well, the rate cut wasn't going to make them vote Labor.
Labor's had their turn. They've stuffed the economy up sufficiently, so it's time for a change.
Will Anthony Albanese get your support?
No, but no, not this time. He did last time, not this time.
Still for Albanese, this was the good news, the glimmer of it, that he needed to call an election to say, you know, look, I'm the guy that brings inflation down. So expect him to wait only a couple more weeks, I'd say, before calling an election for April, after the West Australian election is out of the way. Joining me is Mark Burris. He's the founder of Wizard Home Loans, Australia's second largest non-bank mortgage lender, which he sold at quite a good price in 2004. Mark is now executive chairman of Yellow Brick Road. Mark Burris, thank you so much for joining me. Treasurer Jim Chalmers was this afternoon congratulating himself. He said this little cut was all part of his plan. Is it a good plan?
It was a good plan if we get a cut because of him, but it's not the reason why we've got a cut. He hasn't had anything to do with the cut. The cut has come about as a result of Australians restraining their spending habits as a result of higher interest rates. And that's pretty much a reflection of or response to the Reserve Bank's move. So I don't see which government, whether a state or federal government, has done anything to control inflation in this country. The inflation has been controlled in this country by virtue of consumers changing their spending behaviour.
And certainly not governments controlling their spending behaviour. Mark, this did feel to me a little bit like the rate cut the Reserve Bank wasn't that sure about or felt compelled to give, not necessarily because of the evidence in front of it. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But Michelle Bullock, the bank governor, did say the board had debated it and it wasn't sure there'd be more cuts for a while yet. What do you make of all that? Yeah,
it seems to make sense because the trim mean rate, which is currently at 3.2%, that's the sort of underlying inflation rate, still isn't in the 2 to 3 zone where she would like to see it. It's travelling that direction. If you look at the December quarter trimmed mean or core inflation number, it was 0.5%. If you extrapolate that out for 12 months, in other words, multiply by 4, you'll take the view that core inflation is currently running at 2%. That's great. But if you don't do that, you just look at core inflation for the December quarter, look at core inflation for the September, June, and March quarter 2024, core inflation is still at 3.2%. So it depends on which way you go. The debate I reckon that they've had is, should we look at the current data based on a forward-looking position, which gives us a 2% core inflation, or should we look at inflation based on the way we normally look at it, that is historical inflation for the past 4 quarters, including the December quarter, which shows you a core inflation of 3.2. I reckon that's the debate they've had. But Australians have suffered for a long time with really high cost of living, Andrew, and they have, on top of that, suffered for a long time, or at least 3 million Australians have suffered for a long time with a really high mortgage rate, like 12 rate rises coming off the back of a very low rate. And they probably thought, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and see what response we're going to get from the consumers.
Mark, it just so frustrates me. This country's sitting on so much wealth, oil and gas and uranium and coal and all that, and we've got massive electricity prices. How did that go? But also the basic thing of this country, we've got growth weak, according to this Reserve Bank report today. We got productivity terribly low. We've got inflation still a problem. We've got a decade of government deficits predicted. This country should be so rich. What do you think's gone wrong?
I think governments have, to be frank with you, all governments, particularly at state and federal level, have certainly been a bit misdirected in where they're concentrating their efforts. I see the way it's going is that governments have actually tried to be popular and satisfy everybody's requests. That is, from every walk of life, those people who, particularly in relation to the Labor Party, because the Labor Party is made up of lots of different groups, and you can't, at the end of the day, satisfy everybody's requirements. It's impossible. I just think that we should have concentrated on a few things like getting our power bills, gas, electricity, etc., getting that secure, firmed up. And we should be the cheapest electricity and power bill definitely in our region, but we're not. We're nowhere near it in terms of our resources. We are so resource rich when it comes to those types of items. Like, I know we got coal and I know we got gas, and we sort of not making use of those. We're not optimizing those because of some sort of other view on the world in relation to who we should be complying with and conforming to, as opposed to looking at what's the best for Australia. What's best for Australia should always be at the forefront of our minds as a government, I think. But I don't believe that has happened for the past 10 years. I do not, particularly in the last few years, we are not looking at what's best for Australia, as opposed to how do we fit into the rest of the world? What's best for Australia in terms of how we look relative to the rest of the world? First and foremost should be what's best for Australia. And power bills is number one right now.
It sure is. I just can't believe it's like a religious cult. Don't use your natural advantages. I mean, it's extraordinary. Mark Bouris, great to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
You're most welcome, Andrew. Thank you.